Hello, I'm Eric Telford, and thank you for joining the Franklin Center's live school choice webcast with Grover Norquist. We hope you'll all join us today in our conversation by following us at amplifychoice.com. You can tweet along with us there using the hashtag AmplifyChoice. You can also ask questions to Grover or myself using our Twitter handles. I'm at Blame Telford, and Grover is at Grover Norquist. We'd love to have you be a part of the conversation today. Join us. You can also email your questions to us at telford@franklincenterhq.org. That's telford@franklincenterhq.org. Please send us your questions. Love to have you involved. This is an effort we've been doing all week at amplifychoice.com to help get the message out about National School Choice Week and a very important public policy issue. We're extremely pleased to be joined by Grover Norquist today. Grover, I'm going to turn it over to you for some opening remarks, and then we'll jump into the questions.
Sure. Well, I think school choice is interesting. Let me start with a story. 1983, I was at one of those retreats that Gingrich and the Conservative Opportunity Society Republicans would hold. Maybe 30 Republicans went to Baltimore or Annapolis for 2 days, for a weekend. And these were the people who thought it was interesting to take a weekend away to think about new and different ideas, things that leadership weren't onto, what the president might not be interested in, but breaking into new stuff. And at the discussion, at some point, somebody talked about school choice. And a very well-known conservative congressman, who you'd recognize the name, said at the time, if you're going to talk about school choice, I am going to have to leave this room because it's off the record meeting. I can't have it said anywhere that I was in a room where something as radical as school choice was discussed. 1983. So that's how far we've come to where today every single Republican in the House and Senate would tell you they're for full school choice. They may define it different ways, but they're for school choice. Many Democrats, elected Democrats, in cities and even state legislators would tell you they're cheerfully for school choice. And a lot of people would tell you they're for choice, but may have it so constricted that you and I wouldn't recognize it as choice. But they're at least paying lip service to the idea. So this is an idea that has come very rapidly. People talk about other issues that have moved quickly from heck no to, well, of course, we've always thought that way. This is one that's moved very quickly and I think is about to explode in reality.
Absolutely. And I know, Grover, you come from Americans for Tax Reform, where you focus a lot on fiscal issues, on limited government, on taxation, and a lot of people on the left will use it as this is a gimmick by the conservatives to try to take money away from public education. Can you talk a little bit about the benefits of school choice? What does it mean to our economy, to our global competitiveness, to the quality of education for children?
Sure. Look, monopolies don't work well. They just don't, because they don't have competitors. There's nothing to compare it to. Monopolies always get fat and sloppy and lazy because nobody's ever gaining on them, because they're a monopoly. And the federal government is a really big monopoly, but the 50 states and even school districts that are government-run school districts are a monopoly unless you have school choice. We've always had school choice for the Ted Kennedys and the Nelson Rockefellers. Their kids have always had school choice because they had enough money to pay the taxes for property taxes for schools and to send their kids to nice private schools. What we didn't have was school choice for everybody else. So about maybe 10% of kids go to private school today, either well-to-do people who can afford it or people who, for religious or other reasons, are just determined to make very significant sacrifices. But there are a lot of people in the middle who really want to get their kids into better schools and can't afford to do it under present circumstances because the government's already taken their money away and put it in the public school system. So school choice simply says if the state government is going to spend $5,000 per pupil, what does it matter to the state whether they give that to the school district you're normally assigned to, or give it to the parent and say, take it to any school you want to, public, private, for-profit, online, you, the parent, decide. There are people who, for ideological reasons, believe parents are stupid and can't be trusted and government bureaucrats care more about your children than you do. That doesn't pass the laugh test for most Americans. But that's the thing is, does competition give you a better outcome or a monopoly? School choice says, let's have competition with parents and students being the deciders, not a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C., or the state capitol, or even at the local school district.
I think you mentioned the wide appeal that this issue has, not just to Republicans, but to Democrats. I think we see it across racial lines and across economic levels of people of different levels of personal income and wealth supporting it. All sorts of different demographics are strongly behind this, except for, I think, the few that are empowered by the unions and the kind of public establishment system. I was just at the kickoff event for National School Choice Week where they said that it was easier to find a Democrat to speak than a Republican. They had Jared Polis from Colorado speaking and very passionate about school choice. You know, a lot of this unfolds on the state level, and I know at ATR you guys pay very close attention to what's happening on a state-by-state basis. Are there governors, are there states that you think have been more aggressive, are on the leading edge, and are doing a better job with school choice and education than others that you would highlight?
Absolutely. But I think we should pay some attention to the people who did the breakthroughs. Wisconsin first did it in Milwaukee, in a city in Madison. And just a few hundreds and a few thousand to begin with. D.C., the federal Republicans at the national level, forced Clinton to agree to do it in D.C., a few thousand people. Jeb Bush did it for a few thousand people in Florida. And the reason those first test cases were so important, even though other states have now leapfrogged beyond the original states in terms of numbers and depth of commitment to school choice, was that the other team, and I worked on a statewide initiative in California to have school choice. And people said if you did that, there'd be witches' schools and they'd be organ harvesting the kids or something, you know, during recess. There was the most outrageous, and still are in some cases, but with one example, and now we have several examples of statewide school choice, large numbers, it's now impossible to promote the lie that there's some big liability. Very similar to what happened with concealed carry permits in the Second Amendment issue. When Florida did it and the world didn't end and there weren't shootouts at the OK Corral, then 40 other states said, oh, okay, it's safe. So now we know, because some states moved first on school choice, that the ice is thick enough to let you stand up. And politicians want to know, if I do this, am I going to lose the next election? If I do this, is something going to go wrong? Am I going to lose the next election? That's the biggest thing that could go wrong. So now Louisiana, over 300,000 kids have the opportunity to have about a $5,000 scholarship to go anywhere. They don't have enough schools set up yet to take 300,000, but there's no bar once the schools are established and churches, synagogues, mosques set these things up. Non-religious schools can be set up. You saw Indiana, I think about 600,000 kids are available in Indiana, about 240,000 in Arizona. The numbers of children now with access to a school voucher scholarship, about $5,000, not pennies, this is big, is way up there. And Florida's now got tens of thousands of kids. The way school choice, full school choice, comes about is one of three ways, really. They've been giving vouchers, state-sponsored vouchers, to kids with special needs. And the other team has a hard time going, can't have the special needs kids. Arizona, when we were pushing for school choice years ago, they had a law in Arizona, still do, that if the teachers didn't like you, they could throw you out. They had school choice and send a voucher with you. Okay? But if the parent thought the school wasn't working, not the school didn't think the kid was working, parent had no choice. So we really use that in making the case for school choice in Arizona. I'm sorry, teachers union has school choice, parents don't. So one is for special needs, handicapped kids and others, being able to move the state money to different places that work. And no public school is going to have the capacity to deal with special needs kids as well as a school set up for special needs kids. Then the other is to get around Blaine law amendments, restrictions on public money, taxpayer money going to parochial schools, which were laws passed around in the 1800s, so kids couldn't go to Catholic schools. Very, very bigoted anti-Catholic movement, unfortunately, in the country. And these laws were all passed not to protect teachers' unions, they didn't exist, but as an anti-Catholic thing. Now the teachers' unions embrace these disgusting laws. And to get around that, you say, you can contribute and get a tax credit for money to a scholarship program, then the scholarship program gives money to kids. And that way you can get tax deductions and credits in. And tens of thousands of kids have done that, and that's moved state through state. The new one is the state portion of education in Louisiana, Indiana, Arizona follows you to the school you want to. And Arizona and North Carolina is now entered with a huge 750,000 kids are available. Again, they're not there in terms of the number of kids yet taking it up, but they're not putting caps as they did in D.C., as they did in Wisconsin. They're now lifting the caps, and so there's no limit, real limit, to how many kids can get full school choice. So you're going to see more schools showing up, more new opportunities, more entrepreneurship. We've been running schools the way Socrates did for thousands of years. Low tech, one-on-one, not, and there are new ideas that we need to discover.
Now, you mentioned Wisconsin and Milwaukee. We actually brought a group of 35 bloggers to Milwaukee and had them tour a charter school and a private school.
Oh, great.
We went to Hope Christian Academy, where they have a 100% graduation rate. And it's just amazing to see these kids who line up to get in a lottery because there aren't enough spaces available. You talked about the caps, and I know that's a big issue in Wisconsin, that literally the zip code you're born in determines whether you go to a failing public school or not, or you can wait in line, and if you draw the lucky number, it is like winning the lottery. You have the chance for a good education and a good future. But we certainly see opponents of school choice trying to take that away. Can you talk for a moment about the lawsuit in Louisiana? You know, we grade students, they come home with a report card, parents hold their kids accountable. Schools are graded in Louisiana, and those that are deemed failing, children have been allowed to leave to find a school that does succeed, but the Department of Justice is currently suing to try to stop that, ironically citing a civil rights statute that many call school choice the civil rights issue of our time. Could you talk for a moment about what's going on there and why it's important?
Look, the Obama administration has a very politicized Justice Department. And so on behalf of the teachers' unions, they're trying to destroy school choice in Louisiana and anywhere else they can. But in Louisiana, they have a tool, some of the civil rights laws and so on. And there have been some agreements that courts had said that you can't change the racial makeup of schools, and they're worried about white flight, okay? But they're going after and attacking black kids moving from a failed school to a successful school, worried about, the percentages of different people at different schools. It's nonsense. It's not going to go anywhere at the end of the day. Here's the real fear. A parent with 4 children, each gets $5,000. So mom has $20,000 she can take to shop and go to different schools. The public school system, the mayor, the government of that local area is going to treat that mother with a respect she's never seen before in her entire life. Now they send her a note and say, okay, wise guy, send your kid to this school, full stop, don't talk to me, don't bother me, don't show up at school and ask any foolish questions. It's a question of control of your children's education, control of your own life, self-respect. The modern Democratic Party and the teachers' union political movement cannot give you that self-respect. They don't want you to have it. And the modern conservative movement, the modern Republican Party, again, Republicans came up on school choice after the conservatives had. Milton Friedman first really wrote about it widely and made a sales pitch for it. But it's interesting, that idea was out there and understood a long time before it was able to move politically. It's a very interesting study of taking an idea to reality, and we're now in a situation where I think in the next 10 years in all 57 states, they're going to be significant, if not complete, school choice.
Great. I'd like to remind our viewers that they can join the conversation by asking us questions using the hashtag #AmplifyChoice on Twitter. You can tweet me at BlameTelford. You can tweet Grover at Grover Norquist, or you can email us at telford@franklincenterhq.org. Please contact us with your questions. We'd love to ask Grover anything that's striking your curiosity. Grover, a couple of questions. School choice and finding outlets for children to leave failing public schools is one option, but there's also another reform side, reforming the public education system. I know Governor Christie has taken some aggressive steps in New Jersey. Maybe you could talk about, should failing public schools be closed? Should we introduce concepts like merit pay? How can we better reform public education to hold school administrators and teachers more accountable?
I believe at the end of the day that the only meaningful reform is school choice, and that all of the things you mentioned are the sorts of things that would flow from school choice. And to put them in one at a time instead of school choice is to miss. It's like could you make the post office efficient by coming in and screaming at the workers to work faster or something, or firing different people, or paying people different things? I suppose you could, but the best way to make the post office efficient is to allow FedEx and UPS to deliver not just packages but mail, to have email. Okay, that's how you make the post office efficient. All of the downsizing on post office, unnecessary staff, all the efforts to make it more competent and deliver on time and to be able to track packages, all came because of competition. So I don't know what the best way to run a school is. Okay, I mean, I think, having spent many, many years in public schools, I have some ideas of what worked and what didn't. But I do know that if a parent can look at a dozen private schools and half dozen public schools and make decisions, they will go to the ones with the best success. And how do you get that success? Well, there'll be a lot of experimentation. We'll look at what works and what doesn't. And yes, 1 out of 3 restaurants fail in a given year, okay? And they go out of business. What does that mean? It means restaurants are pretty high quality. And it also makes it easy for new people with a good idea to get in and succeed. But people with a new idea that don't work, okay, they don't stick around for 50 years running the same project. So, yeah, schools that everyone leaves should be closed or sold to somebody who runs a school and could use the building.
Now, I definitely think there's also, with public education reform, with school choice, there is a definite benefit to the taxpayer. Maybe we could talk about some of the limited government implications, some of the tax implications. I was the student rep on my board of ed in high school, and I remember meetings at the end of the year. We've got all this money left. What can we do with it before they take it back? God forbid we should return it. So there is a strong argument to be made that we can educate children better, we can do it more efficiently, and we can do it for a smaller cost. What would you say is the main implication for taxpayers, not just the general folks who pay into the tax system and maybe don't have children themselves, but the tax rebates and other aspects that relate to children or families with children in schools?
Look, education is extremely important. It can be done in many different ways. There are 2 million people homeschool in the United States. Either sends their kids to religious schools, to secular private schools, to government schools of different stripes. More online education. High school kids going to local colleges. There's a lot of opportunities to do different things. The one-size-fits-all straitjacket doesn't allow for that to happen. And so our goal is to have the most effective education at the most reasonable price that you can. Only competition does that, and only school choice does that, only empowering parents to make the decisions, not some bureaucrat telling parents what's best for them. You get lots of advice. I mean, I don't mind teachers or administrators saying to parents, hey, come to our school, here's what we do, we think it's the best. Okay, you're allowed to make that sales pitch if you're selling a car or an education, but you're not allowed to tell me this is the car you want to buy because you don't get to make that decision and you don't know the answer to that. So we do know that over time, the number of bureaucrats per student in privately run systems, like the large parochial system in New York City, is a fraction of the number of bureaucrats. There's a movement in the country to try and get 2/3 of the dollars spent in education to actually have something to do with the classroom. 2/3, not 100%, 2/3. That's a real indictment of, and the teachers union and the government school people are fighting that because they don't want anyone asking, is the money being spent going to the kids' education or is it going somewhere else? We have way too many bureaucrats, way too many levels of management, and that is clearly something that competition squeezes out. There are a lot of people who could teach one class a week, not be a full-time teacher. There are lots of people who are retired teachers who could come in, people who are retired of Florida who are teachers. Why couldn't they teach 1 day a week? Why not more flexibility on the labor law, on teaching? Why not give teachers, merit pay? There's some teachers who are so good that they would make videos, like some rock groups are so good that they make a record and everybody in the country buys their record. Not just the people who live in their town see their talents. The Beatles didn't just, at Liverpool, everybody really likes the Beatles, okay? They were good enough that all through the world people are listening to the Beatles records. We could have teachers who videotape and put on DVD and on audio classes that kids around the world could be listening to. Teacher can make a lot more money if they're able to have that kind of freedom. They're starting to do that, talk about it at universities. The establishment's not for it. They want the brand. So I think there's a lot we can do, and superstar teachers should be millionaires, and teachers that can't do the job should do something else, like be congressmen or city councilmen.
Yeah, and on that very topic, and you talked about virtual learning before, I think if we could take a moment to talk about blended learning, the opportunity not just for teachers to make more money themselves by reaching other audiences, but for schools to cut down cost and increase quality and offer a broader array of courses. I know at my school, the higher achieving students ran out of AP classes to take, and maybe there were only 3 or 4 of them, so they wouldn't hire another teacher to launch a new AP class that there wasn't a market demand for in the school. What do you think the role of virtual and blended learning is coming up on the horizon?
Well, again, the great thing about the free market and freedom is you don't know what's going to work, okay? And so I think, since present rules have restricted a lot of these opportunities, online learning, the technology is just opening up to make MOOCs and online learning more easily accessed. So I think you're going to see a great deal of that. I sat in on one of those meetings where a bunch of high-tech guys sat around and thought deep thoughts. They're all liberals. And is K through 12 or universities going to look anything like what they do now in 25 years? And every one of them said, absolutely not. It's all going to be different. They weren't sure. They had different theories about how. But they were quite certain that school choice and technology both are disruptive technologies that will shake up how we deliver education and do it in a way that will greatly increase the quality of education.
Now, Grover, I know you also serve as a contributing editor at the American Spectator.
Yeah.
And as somebody who plays a role in the media, what do you think the role is of the media in informing the public about school choice, about these options? I think it's something I'm glad to see National School Choice Week shine a light on, but throughout the rest of the year, we don't really hear too much about it.
It is, and people used to point out that corrupt politicians no longer hide their relatives at City Hall because the press goes to City Hall. They hide them at schools because the press doesn't show up at schools to see whether no-show jobs are not showing up. We need to have the press much more aggressive in looking at what works and what doesn't in education. They need to go to school districts, public school districts. I want to walk around. I want to see what's going on. Parents should feel free to come by and sit in and audit classes and have a sense of what's going on. I think you do more of that, you'd have a much better educated electorate, you'd have a much better educated press. Too much of the media, the establishment media, takes press releases and rewords them. And since the bureaucracy in public school systems has lots of time to send out press releases, they get to dominate much of the conversation. On the other hand, there's a whole group of people, high-tech guys, many of them liberal Democrats because of social issues or something, who, when you get them on the issue of school choice and of the public sector teachers unions, they just sound like Barry Goldwater. They've had it with the bureaucratized system. I think even Bill Gates, who's spent $5 billion trying to help improve education without offending the teachers unions, discovered you can waste $5 billion, but you don't actually accomplish anything if you're not willing to take on the structures that make education difficult to actually create.
Yeah, I think you said it before, how much money actually goes to the classroom. During the recent special Senate election in New Jersey, I remember seeing some ads about the $100 million that Mark Zuckerberg gave to Newark schools. I forget the percentage, but it was ridiculous. The amount that was spent on administrative costs, polling, market research, other advertising campaigns. Very few of those dollars actually went to the students. And then we see films like Waiting for Superman or The Lottery, where we see these teachers in rubber rooms who have basically been deemed unfit to teach children, but you can't fire because they have tenure and they're still collecting taxpayer money each and every day. I think we see documentaries, we see campaign ads, but it's not showing up in the media, so I do think that's something I hope we can get some more attention.
Well, the alternative media, blogs and so on, I think when the establishment isn't doing its job, counterculture has a chance to really shine. And this is one where the people who should have been doing this for the last 50 years have really ceded both the moral authority to do it and They just don't have the energy, evidently, to look at what's going on, and they don't want to be the ones to tell parents, that their present government-run school system isn't up to snuff.
Nobody wants to attack a teacher. That's for sure.
Oh, but here's what Chris Christie did. Chris Christie taught every elected official who wants to learn how to criticize the teachers' union and the bureaucracy and the government monopoly that is public education, and make it clear that you're not criticizing the individual teachers and that you're not dissing education, because we love education and value it, because we know so many teachers who want to educate. That's why we're fighting the blob. And he did it, and then we saw other people take up that. I mean, it's safe. Yeah. You can walk out on the ice and not fall through, you know. I can do that. And so more and more people did. So I think his truth-telling and the fact that it worked. If he'd lost the next election, everyone would go, oops, don't do that. But he didn't. He was successful.
You know, you've mentioned Chris Christie, you talked about Florida and Jeb Bush, Louisiana, Bobby Jindal. These are all names that tend to float around as 2016 presidential
Wisconsin,
prospects.
Scott
Walker, I think, as somebody who often has a firm grasp on the political landscape and commentates on the horse race aspect, what kind of role do you think this issue will play in that selection process for the next Republican nominee for president?
Well, I tend to think that we're looking at governors in terms of who the next Republican nominee is. There are a number of very successful governors, maybe add to that Rand Paul at the national level, because he has a national base and a fundraising base. But other than that, you've got a bunch of governors. And one of the things we're going to be asking governors who run for president is, did you cut taxes? Did you rein in spending? Did you do school choice? And if you wake up a free market, Republican, conservative, libertarian 20, 30 years ago, they'd said cut spending, fight trial lawyers. School choice is now in the list of 3 or 4 things that you expect a political leader to fight for and show some progress on. Now, maybe you're in a very difficult state, and there's a reason why the state house is completely run by the other team, but were you fighting for it? What were you doing? How much did you accomplish? It's really become a litmus test of whether you care about education. I think it's a fair cop. It's an accurate litmus test.
Great. I want to remind our viewers that they can email us questions at telford@franklincenterhq.org. We have our first one coming in from Rhonda in Tallahassee. Lottery schools seem so wonderful for the winners. What about those that can't get in? What do we tell parents who can't get their child out of a failing school?
That we need to change the state law so that more people have vouchers, scholarships, the ability to get their tax dollars back so that they can educate their kids. At the end of the day, we've got to change the elected officials in order to change the laws.
Great. Another question from Jared. What are some of the problems that we've had getting voucher programs passed?
Well, there are serious. First is the other team argues that all these awful things will happen, and they could make that case before school choice existed. Then they tried to argue it was only for rich people, and so almost all of the school choice programs are targeted at low-income people. Oops. And then they tried to argue that the public school system was working. That lasted about 5 minutes and was laughed off stage, so that really didn't stay very long as an argument. Then there's the constitutional amendments, the Blaine amendments, which were passed in the 1870s, 1880s, targeted at keeping Catholics from sending their kids to parochial schools. They wanted to send them to the government-run schools, so they become Americanized. Those laws are now used to say that you can't take your tax dollars back and go to a school of your choice. So many of the school choice laws have had to be organized around Blaine amendments, or laws in some case. And the good news is, I think at the end of the day we should be repealing the Blaine amendments because they're put in for pernicious reasons and have pernicious effects. But each of those has been overcome. And the fear, I'm going to try something new and it won't work and something terrible will happen, like I don't win the next election. People are past that because they've now seen a number of states pass mass school choice, large numbers, Louisiana, Indiana, now North Carolina, Arizona. I tend to think Arizona is going to be the model. And there they have a scholarship, about $5,000, that follows you to whatever school you want. And if the private school you go to is only $4,000, you can save $1,000 and put it into a bank account, an education savings account, for college, for a more expensive private school in older years. And they've also, I think, made accommodations for homeschooling, too. Oh. So there you have a wonderful situation where parents can save up for college through the money the government was otherwise going to spend on public schools.
Great. We have another question from Jason, and this is on a topic you just mentioned with religious private schools. Should public funds be used for religious private schools if a parent wants to use their money, voucher, tax credit, etc., to send their child to alternative schools? Are we forgetting those tax dollars are paid for by the parents?
Well, exactly. I mean, the tax dollars are money that was taken from you, and then the government gives some of it back. And somehow when the government takes your money to turn around and go, now we're going to have strings attached to it, then you could turn around and turn everything into a tax credit. That's one way of avoiding that argument. Some states have done that. But I think everybody gets the joke that when we ran the GI Bill after World War II, and we told all the returning GIs, if you want to go to college, we'll give you a stipend. You could take that to Notre Dame. You could take that to Brandeis. There wasn't some ban on going to a religious school. And nor should they be, because the purpose is clearly secular education. And the resources are going, in the case of small kids, to parents, or in the case of college students, to the college student. I think we're largely around that. There's some bitter enders trying to make a fight on that, but I don't think it worked for them.
Sure. I again want to remind our viewers, email us your questions at telford@franklincenterhq.org. We have one from Mary Beth. What are some of the problems that we've had getting voucher programs passed?
The teacher unions don't like them. Teachers don't mind it, but the teacher unions understand that this is a criticism of the way they've structured schools. Okay. You have school boards who go, oh, wait a minute, you're dissing me, okay, because you want to leave. The East Germans used to get very irritated at their citizens who wanted to leave, and because they took it as a criticism of the East German system. And so the idea that somebody might want to go to a different school hurts the feelings of the people who run the monopoly. And so they get mad about it. And the teachers union is a major public sector union with, in the case of Wisconsin, $1,000 in dues taken from a teacher makes $50,000 a year. That's a lot of money. $1,000 from a teacher makes $50,000 a year. That money then goes to politicians. So the modern Democratic Party is largely owned at the national level by the teachers unions. There's some cases, John Norquist up in Wisconsin, where that may or not, where that's not the case, but it's a case at the national level. House, Senate, many state legislators are really owned and the property of the teachers unions. Down in Alabama, they were the major funder of the Democratic Party for years and years, probably still are. So the Democratic Party was responding to the unions who paid their way and gave them the money they needed to run campaigns. The fear of the unknown, well, if you have private schools, what would happen from people who weren't certain of them. So those were all, and then the legal obstructions from the Blaine amendments and so on. I think those are the ones that slowed it down, but we've jumped over every one of those hurdles and shown it's safe, it's okay. So I think we're going to see more states move much more rapidly to do that. Now, you also have some parents who spend a lot of money to move to the suburbs, who pay very high house mortgages and very high property taxes because they were told their school was really good. And it's not always true. And so it's unsettling to those parents to learn that other schools are better, that their public school is not all that good. And if you've had your kid in school for 7 years, you kind of let your kid down. Yeah. So you've got to look forward with people. So there's some sort of buyer's remorse from people who've invested parts of their lives or their kids' lives in the government monopoly and hadn't been open to other alternatives. But we're trying to give people freedom to do the best in the future.
Great. We have another question from Twitter. From a tax standpoint, what do you like and what don't you like?
Well, I love the idea that we have competition between various schools and kinds of schools and structures for how schools work, whether it's homeschooling or public schools or parochial schools, because competition keeps prices down. And when the cost of education is lower, then taxes are lower. You need fewer bureaucrats to run more effective schools. So you save a lot of money. School choice gives you better quality at lower cost in the same way that the free market gives you better cars at lower cost and better bicycles and better, seed for pumpkins. Whatever the product is, if you have competition, you get a better product, a better quality at a lower cost. And that's true for services like education as well.
Great. Another question, do you feel education is better off today than 50 years ago? Where do you see us in the future?
Oh, dear.
I think right now also if we could tackle that from a global perspective, since globalization has been a much larger factor.
Yeah, if we were only competing with people in our state, the fact that the public school system was equally incompetent for everybody in the state would mean nobody was disadvantaged. But we're competing with serious people around the globe, from Russia to China to Singapore and Canada. And it's not fair to disadvantage a child because Barack Obama got a lot of money from the teachers union and he tried to shut down and kill the school choice effort in D.C. Because when the fight came between teachers union money and kids and their families and their future, he was with the teachers union against screw the kids. And that's one of the first decisions Obama made was to hell with the kids in D.C. I don't care about their education and their future. And I think conservatives and advocates of school choice can be very proud that they really are leading not only a civil rights movement, because this is a civil right to be educated, not have somebody use you as cannon fodder for their campaign contributions, but also a patriotic question. This is a question of national security. It's a question of a strong nation, a better educated nation that will do more manufacturing and have more jobs and create more opportunity. And a lot of the jobs in the world are now high-tech, which means you have to know something about technology and computers and engineering if you're going to be constructive and help everything, move things forward. So this is it's a terribly important issue, regardless of what you think is most important in life. An educated American citizenry will make fill in the blank better, whatever issue you're thinking about or what your concerns are. A better educated, tougher, more prepared American collection of young people will make a better future for the whole country, for everybody. There's some fights that you'd like to win. This one you want to win. It's necessary to win, and winning is a big deal, as Biden said. It's a big deal to win school choice. Yeah.
And I think Aristotle had said that the most important question any society faces is who is teaching the children and what are they teaching them? So I want to end with one last question, Grover. Folks who've been watching today, learning a lot about this policy, learning maybe that we need to give it more attention, what can they do? We recently did an event with a state legislator from the Milwaukee suburbs, and he said he's only ever received one phone call about school choice, and that just happens to be because one of the leaders of a national school choice advocacy group lives there. I mean, aside from contacting your lawmaker, the most basic step, what can people do to get the message out and move the needle?
Sure. Google school choice. Go and notice what is available in other states. Ask your elected officials. Ask people. They have hundreds of thousands of kids in Arizona and Louisiana and Indiana have access to school choice. Most Americans don't know that. If you're in a state without school choice, you still may think it's exotic and different and risky. And again, when you talk to a politician, ask him where he is on school choice, how much school choice, why don't we have more school choice in our city or state. If you're in one of those states with much school choice, well, why is it only available to the lowest half of the income ladder? Why not everybody? So Louisiana's not finished fixing things. Indiana's not done. Arizona hasn't done everything. They've taken giant steps forward, hundreds of thousands, but there are millions of kids in those states. So talk about it, ask about it, educate yourself on what is existing in your state and in neighboring states, and then take a look at, again, talk to people. Just talk to legislators, talk to your friends, talk to your school district. What is available? Because even places you think there isn't school choice, a lot of times high schools will let you go to a local college. That's a crack in the wall.
Yeah. Great. Well, Grover, I want to thank you for taking the time to be with us today.
Absolutely. Key
Unfortunately,
issue.
we're out of time, but I encourage all of you to continue the conversation at amplifychoice.com, on Twitter with the hashtag AmplifyChoice. I hope you all pay attention to this issue and keep making your voice heard. Grover, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.